Hi friends, I have received quite a few questions about how to create this purple mesh wave effect. So let's go ahead and hop into it. I'll go ahead and create a brand new project over here. And let's call it, I don't know, orange mesh? Sure, why not? And let's go ahead and delete this rectangle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a first I'm going to prep my project here to make sure it works great when we move to the web. So I'll go ahead and make sure it's set to responsive with auto zoom turned to yes. And let's go with a darker background. There we go, something like that. And now we're going to add a sphere to the scene. There we go. So now we have a sphere that we've added. And what we're going to do is we're going to play around with the material. So in order to get the blob-like effect, what you do is within material settings is you add a displace. So click into this drop down and go to displace. And immediately we're going to see a little bit of movement already has occurred. And you can click and drag here to increase or decrease that. But for now, let's go ahead and set that to maybe like 5. Yeah, something like that. And we also want to add some color, so let's go ahead and choose like a nice orange color. Let's see. Something maybe about there. That'll work for now. And you might have noticed in the purple mesh that we have this mesh-like effect. And it's really easy to achieve that. What you'll do is select the element and go to visibility and show a wireframe. And it's literally that easy to get that mesh-like look. But for the base one, we'll keep that off. So we want to make something a little bit larger. So I'm holding in Shift and dragging here. And now I want to increase the displace a little bit. Say maybe about there. And at this point is usually when I add a state. And so states allow you to essentially add a different state of what the material looks like. So in the second one, the second state, we're going to go into our display settings and we're going to add movement. So by default it's set to 1, but we want to increase that. And you see live here as we're adjusting that number, we'll see some motion happening. So let's go to about maybe 20. And then from there, we'll go to events and use an onStart function. So start event and go or create a transition on the sphere element from the base state to the state. And we want to do that over probably around a 20-second timeline. And we also want to loop that. So we'll go to loop, go to infinite, and choose a ping pong cycle. And sometimes I'll play around with different easing settings, but if we go ahead and just press play now, we're going to see there's a little bit of motion, but we also notice that there's some square-like edges that are popping up. So what we want to do is go ahead and smooth and edit. So we'll increase the subdivision modifier and just bring that up. About 4 or 5 usually does the trick. And then click increase base subdivision. And there we go. That should do it. So now if we go to play, that actually did the opposite. So there's a bit of trial and error. So it looks like it didn't accept that subdivision change. Okay, now it's actually smoothed out. And it's not moving quite fast enough, but we can always adjust that later on. But at this point, you might notice that there's kind of like this fade effect that we have, and that can be achieved by using the fog feature within the scene. So click anywhere on the scene where you don't have a element selected, or you can go to scene here and then click on the scene. And that will display the scene settings. And we're going to turn on fog. So by default it's going to be white, But we can go ahead and adjust that down to black. And we want to adjust these different settings, so the near and far, and that will give us more of that fading effect. And I actually want to bring this down to like a darker, there we go, to where it fades in. I'll oftentimes just copy and paste the background color directly into this field. And now we can adjust these settings here, and it gives you a really nice effect where it kind of looks like the blob is coming out of nowhere. And from here, what we can do is we can either create clones using the cloner function, or we can copy and paste. So for this one, I'm going to use the clone function just to test it out. And by default, the cloner function is set to linear, so we can adjust that to maybe radial. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit here because it looks like it's pretty far away. So we want to decrease the radius a little bit, and somewhere around there. And we can also increase the count here if you wanted to. That is a little too much. Usually about 3 to 5 will do the trick. And then at this point, once you're happy with where they are, we can convert those to instances. And we'll see now that we have these sphere clones, and they should all carry the same animation from this base sphere element in the component. So everything's going to kind of move at the same pace, but we want to change things a little bit. So let's go ahead and select this clone 1, and we can kind of bring that down a little bit. That'll work. And we can even make it larger. There we go. And we want to click down into the sphere, and with that selected, then we can go down to the wireframe. So we can show the wireframe instead for this one. It looks like I may have made the wireframe a little too intense. I typically don't use the instances when I've made this in the past, but let's see what we can do. Let's go ahead and hit play. It's kind of wild looking. As you rotate, you can see elements going in and out of the fog. It's kind of cool. Well, that was fun playing around with some clones. I think I would rather go ahead and just copy and paste, because then we can use that wireframe effect a lot more easily. So I'll delete these clones and select this sphere. And I might also edit the mesh a little bit. So 5 might be a little bit too high. We can go with maybe 3. And again, I want to zoom in a little bit so we can see that on the screen. Great. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And we can move this one up here and a little bit over to the side and select that sphere. And now, there we go. Now the wireframe's working. So it looks like that might not work on the cloner feature, but that's okay. So now we have that mesh element over there, and we can keep copy and pasting this if we'd like to. Move this other one over here. You can also adjust the sizing, and that gives you more of a depth effect to it. And copy and paste that again. Maybe bring it down. Maybe on this one we can adjust the color a little bit, bring it to like a darker color, something like that. And then do the same, or go ahead and just copy and paste that one more time and bring it over. And now we can zoom in and let's press play. So it's a little bit slow for this one. I want a little bit more movement. And the nice thing is that we can just go to our sphere element here and adjust those settings. So you don't have to go and update them for every individual element. On my first pass, that's what I've done here. But this time around, we can just adjust the animation for the sphere. So we can bring this down to, say, 10. That might be a little too fast. Or it might be just right. Whoa. That looks pretty wild. So what I also like to do is, from this point, I like to add a new camera, and this will be our camera view. And at the scene level, I'm going to set it to where the viewport is camera 1. And that way I can go to the personal camera and easily go around and start manipulating things. So I'd like to move these mesh elements. I'm holding the shift key and selecting them. And I'm going to click on the arrow here and bring them a little bit further back. And that just kind of hides them further back. It adds a little more mystery to that experience. It might be a little too far back. Let's bring it up a little. And we could even rotate a little if you want to. Alright, that's great. So the nice thing is, when you're swapping between cameras, now whenever I go to play, it will play from the camera view that I had set before, but I can also swap back and forth here to see those different cameras and add new ones or remove them. So yeah, that is a quick view on how to play around with these mesh settings and create your own. If you want to increase the variance for the animation, you can always go into the different base state and state and adjust the materials. So if we wanted to have more movement, or if we wanted to have a more extreme animation that occurs, we could increase this to like really explode compared to the base state. So that might be a little intense, but it might be what you'd like to go for. Whoa, that's some pretty fun animation. So something else to keep in mind is when people are interacting with a scene, you want to decide, do you want them to be able to click and drag things around, or do you just want it to stay static? So you can update those settings under export and go to your play settings, and this is where you can turn off things like the orbit setting and any of the panning or zooming. And yeah, that would be all you'd have to do to adjust that. You can keep soft orbit on, and that will typically give you more of like an effect of moving around. So if I go to export, play settings, and scroll down here to on hover effects, this will give us an orbit camera type feel. So if we play now, you'll see that the objects will follow the cursor on the screen. Keep in mind this could cause some motion sickness, so be careful and use this feature sparingly, or adjust your settings as well. But that was a really fun and quick tutorial on how to create mesh elements to add and use on the web. And if you want to use this on Webflow or another platform, you can go to export and then go to viewer, and it will create this link right here, which I'll share below. So please let me know if you have any questions, or if there are any tutorials you'd love to see. I'm happy to create them. Have a great day. Goodbye.